Our next presenter is going to be Hylton Heynes, also from the National Fire Protection Association. As Michelle mentioned, based in Boston, Massachusetts. And he's going to be taking a look at the municipal fire departments in the United States, their level of preparedness in the event of a wildland fire. Hylton?
Yeah, so I've got the graveyard shift. Happy to be here in Spain. Learned a hell of a lot the last couple of days visiting your beautiful countryside and learning about the Catalan people, and it's been a wonderful experience. The purpose of my presentation today is to just give you an overview of a methodology that is being used by the National Fire Protection Association to characterize needs of the fire service wholesale throughout the United States. And it may have some application within your country as well to try and quantify, because as we know, data informs decisions. And so if you've got good data, then you can petition and to benefit the fire service moving forward to sustain that activity. Overview of the presentation. I'm going to go through the purpose of the research. I'm going to talk about some of the new questions that we integrated into the needs assessment survey, look at the methodology and concepts, and then for the most part of the presentation, we're going to discuss the results. So it will give you an overview of the status of the wildland fire readiness of our local fire departments in the United States, and it'll give you an overview of that. So the purpose. So the fourth needs assessment is a legacy project that I inherited. In my previous life, I was a wildland firefighter and a forester on a military installation. So I've been counting trees, measuring acres, counting fire-wise communities, and now more recently I count fire trucks. But the purpose of this research was really driven by the United States Fire Administration. They were making significant investments, and they still are making significant investments in our local fire service, and they wanted to know what the outcomes, have some kind of performance indicators on what those investments were doing wholesale across the United States. And so in 2001, this project was initiated, and then there was a follow-up study in 2005. And then NFPA took this research study upon themselves in 2010, and then more recently in 2015, of which I was a part of. And it focuses primarily on local fire departments. So what I mean by local fire departments, it doesn't include military, private, or federal or private brigades. It's the local fire department at the local level is what we are interested in trying to investigate. So you can find this report. You can find this report online at NFPA under fire statistics in the administration section. Once again, it's a long URL to get there, but you should be able to readily find it. It's about a 300-page document that covers the breadth and width of the U.S. fire service, and it may inform some of your decision-making or future research activities. The basic makeup of the report, we have 6 sections. The first section covers personnel and capabilities. Then we look at facilities and apparatus. Then we move on to personnel protective equipment. We also have a section on community risk reduction that's looking at fire prevention and code enforcement. And then the ability to handle unusually challenging incidents. And then we wrap up the report with communications and advanced technologies. I should mention that this is a collaborative effort. We had approximately 13 national stakeholders participate in the development of the question set that was sent out, as well as there was a significant investment. Almost 50 people within NFPA, which is a relatively small organization, touched this project through the course of 2.5 years in the making. So some of the new questions, when I say new questions, there were a lot of new questions that were introduced from 2010. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to talk about the new questions as they relate to wildland firefighting or wildfire topics. So we introduced new questions as they relate to your auxiliary roles. What I mean by auxiliary roles is those are the support roles. So that it's fire department members that are responding to a fire incident, but they don't actually physically do any firefighting. They're not fighting the fire. They are supporting in command ops. They're supporting with water supply, all these ancillary activities that occur on the scene of a wildfire event. And so we didn't have a good handle on that, and this is particularly relevant for a wildfire event due to the magnitude of these events as they scale up in size. We also changed the way the question was asked. I'm sure some of you are deliberating, what is the difference between a wildland fire and a wildland urban interface fire? So we also had this deliberation, and in the end we landed on combining them as one entity, one idea. But in reality, if we had more space, more time, we probably would have split them up. The other thing is that there's a lot of colloquial terms that are used in the wildland firefighting community in the United States. For instance, if you're on the West Coast or the Western United States, you term a brush fire or a bushfire, you term it a wildland fire. However, if you're in the eastern part of the United States, you term it a forest, brush, or grass fire. And so to get a better handle on who is actually addressing this peril, we wanted to have an all-encompassing term so that the person who was responding to the survey would understand what we were actually asking them. Because if you're on the east coast of the United States and you say to a firefighter, did you fight a wildland fire? To them, it doesn't register because they think it's some faraway place in the western United States. But the bottom line is some of the highest risk is in the eastern United States for this peril, given the number of people that are living in the intermix and interface in that area. We also introduced some additional questions as it relates to the level of wildland urban interface training and also the level of personal protective clothing that these fire departments have. We then also looked at, from a community risk reduction perspective, the level of use of a wildfire safety program based on a national model. And what I'm talking to here is, some of you may have heard of the National Firewise program or the Ready, Set, Go program that is now in play in the United States to raise awareness on mitigation activities that fire departments can participate in. And then finally, we wrapped up with a question as it relates to the ability to handle unusually challenging incidents. In this instance, we were looking at WUI fires affecting structures, and we wanted to determine what are the baseline thresholds, the number of structures, how big of a fire area, hectares, what's the threshold that one fire department in their jurisdiction can handle. And we wanted to try and get a handle on that. Oh, wow, okay. And then we also looked at how far a department would have to go to get assistance. So I'm going to have to fly through this.
Well, you're also the last one.
How interested are you in this topic, folks? All right. So I'm going to skip this slide. Basically, the gist of the slide is that we had 40% more information that was included in this 2015 survey, and we sent it to all 26,322 fire departments in the United States. That's fire departments that have administrative and fire response responsibilities. So it was a significant effort. When you look at the breakout, we sent out 26,000 surveys. We received 5,000 surveys for a response of 19.4%. The other interesting factor is the fire departments that were protecting large communities. We got a good response rate, upwards of 80%, down to about 45%, which is excellent from a survey perspective. However, when the response rate we got from the small fire departments that protect populations of 5,000 or less, we got a very poor response rate, and so that had an impact overall. But when I break it out on population protected, we got surveys from fire departments that protect approximately 50% of the US population. So even though our response rate was 19.4%, I'm very happy with the feedback we received, because those fire departments that we did receive information from represent 50% of the US population. There are a couple of benchmarks that we use in the survey, and this is important to understand. The first benchmark is the size of need among all departments. Essentially, that's departments lacking a resource that they need divided by all the departments in the United States. And that's important for comparing activity to activity. So whether it's structure fire, wildland fire, rescue, it's important to be able to compare the need across the board so that you've got a common comparison. Another comparison that we use is the need of fire departments providing a specific service. And so that's departments lacking a resource that they need divided by the departments providing the service. So going on to the results, this is the good stuff. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide. All I can say is that the research was not a perfect longitudinal study, so there was statistical variability because we had different fire departments each year, 2015, 2010, 2005, and 2001, responding to the survey. So it's not a perfect longitudinal study. So when you look at the results, if there's a 1 to 3% difference between each iteration of the survey, you shouldn't read too much into it. You want to look at the big differences to read in any trend that occurred over time. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I don't think it's that relevant, but it just gives you an overview. We've got 1.2 million firefighters, 800,000 are volunteer firefighters, 340,000 are career firefighters. And what I mean by career, they are paid for their services. So that's the breakout. As Michelle, my colleague, mentioned earlier, 88% of the fire departments, so 88%, so that's almost 23,000 fire departments recognize and provide wildland firefighting or WUI firefighting services to their communities. So 23,000. So just have that at the back of your mind as we work through these slides. The need for departments performing wildland-urban interface, the need for training is 71% do not have all their firefighters that are responding to these fires fully trained to address this peril. So 71% of departments in the United States. 29% lack wildland-urban interface operations training. So 29%. When we asked this question, there was also a non-response component. So there was 28% of the fire departments that provide wildland firefighting services that didn't know or didn't respond to this question. So you can infer that more than half of the fire departments, half of that 26,000, did not have or lacked wildland-urban interface, so specific wildland-urban interface fire operations training. So there's a deficiency there. When you look at among all fire departments, that big circle, and you compare to other disciplines, wildland-urban interface and wildland firefighting, 63% of fire departments do not have all personnel trained in this activity. So it ranks third. Fire prevention being number 1, traffic control number 2, wildland-urban interface number 3. The other interesting thing is small fire departments you would associate with wildland fire. Small, they're in the bush. Less than 5,000 people protected. The interesting thing there is this ranking, wildland goes up to number 2. For the large fire departments that are in your metropolitan areas, this ranking, wildland-urban interface, goes down to number 6. So the smaller the fire department, the greater the need, which is a paradox because it's what you would want the reverse. You would want your small fire departments to be well-versed in wildland firefighting operations because that's their greatest risk profile. But that's not the case. The more well-funded fire departments, the career fire departments that are in metropolitan areas are better trained than the rural fire departments that are typically volunteer. From personal protective clothing, 32% of departments have all emergency responders equipped with wildland personal protective clothing. 26% of departments in the United States are not equipped with wildland protective clothing. Another interesting thing, Michelle touched on the PAC test, which is the standard. The National Wildland Fire Coordinating Group has this PAC test, which is a benchmark for fitness to be a firefighter in the wildland. However, when you look at local wildland firefighters, fire departments, only 27% have a fitness and health program at all. That's irregardless of doing the PAC tests or anything. And then of those 27%, 79% include a physical exam and 61% include a fitness exam. So that's a staggering gap given the arduous nature of wildland firefighting that we've exposed with this study. This is an interesting slide. It was trying to get at the maximum number of structures a department can handle alone before they have to call on additional resources. And what stands out is 2 to 5 structures, 64% of departments that respond and they have this situation feel that they can manage that situation. In retrospect, I should have asked the question a little differently. I should have asked how many structures, how many inhabited structures can you protect on your own? Because when you get into rural areas, you have one inhabited structure, and then you have 3 or 4 uninhabited structures, and that was not really the intent of the question. So I anticipate that this number would actually slop over into the one structure domain when you look at it from that perspective. And then as far as acres, more than half can protect between 0.4 to 4 hectares before they have to call on additional resources. I'm going to move through this slide. I'm going to wrap up with this one. Another take-home was 75% of fire departments in the United States are without a hazard mitigation plan. That accounts for 54% of the US population. And when I say hazard mitigation plan, that includes volcanoes, earthquakes, floods, and then wildfire. But if you don't have a plan, then you're up a creek without a paddle. So this is also a staggering finding from that perspective. And then the final statistic I'll share with you today is 89% of fire departments in the United States do not have a wildfire safety program, which accounts for 84% of the US population. And so thanks a lot for your patience. If you want to get this report, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll direct you to this report. Easy. It's a lot easier than the URL. So just shoot me an email. I'll be happy to send you the report, and hopefully it can inform some of your research or decision-making activities in your countries moving forward. So thanks a lot for your patience, and sorry for taking so long. Yeah.